Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're really thankful that of all of the things you could spend your time on, that you would join us to think about co-creating a compassionate campus. The team of us that are going to be sharing with you today are a passionate crew who have been sort of thinking about and working on a bunch of projects and a bunch of ways to sort of shift culture to think about what UBC could be as we sort of move towards a more compassionate campus. I am going to just do a little bit of an introduction of our great team and tell you a little bit about what we've been up to, and then I'll pass it to my colleagues here and some students. So joining us on the panel today, Helen Sharp, Project Manager and Knowledge Translation Leader. She's going to begin our presentation. Sophia and the Palliative Care Club are going to do a presentation on their work as students and now as graduates of nursing, the School of Nursing at UBC Okanagan. Tanya Kang, an incredible counselor in the Wellbeing and Accessibility Services Department. Carly Benoit, Manager of Workplace Health and Wellbeing, will be sharing about some of the work that HR has been doing and supports available for faculty and staff. But to begin, I'd like to acknowledge that UBC Okanagan is situated in the territory of the Syilx Okanagan Nation and their peoples. And I'd also like to acknowledge that you are joining us today from many places, near and far, and acknowledge the traditional owners and caretakers of those lands. We chose today for our presentation because today is the National Grief and Bereavement Day, November 18th in Canada. And the theme this year is Let's Close Canada's Grief Literacy Gap. Grief certainly is a natural response to loss of a person, a relationship, our security, our hope in others. It is something you live with, and it is something that changes us, and it changes, the process itself changes over time. Many of us find it awkward to talk about death or loss or grief, and grief is often misunderstood by those of us experiencing it and by many of us who want to help. And so the goal of our work and sort of thinking about creating a compassionate campus is to sort of close this grief literacy gap, to increase personal connection in the face of loss, to decrease our feelings of isolation or feeling misunderstood and unsupported. And so thank you for spending your very precious time with us, exploring what we could do from a campus perspective to close Canada's grief literacy gap. This event is part of Thrive Month as well. Thrive Month on UBC's campuses is a time where we come together to learn about, talk about, and explore ways to support our mental health. It's a campaign dedicated to shining a spotlight on all the things that UBC does to support mental health. All of the things that we can do to sort of increase our own personal resilience so that when we do have experiences such as a major loss, perhaps we have a different experience, and that we can support each other and talk openly about it and know when and how to seek support on our campuses. So that's the big goal. Carly's team and my team especially have been very busy with many events and supports. There are quite a few ways that you can get involved with us. There is a calendar of events that continues to be very robust throughout the month. There are a myriad of resources available for you to explore and learn about, including our new grief guide, which Helen's going to tell you about on the resource page. And we'd encourage you to help us create a campus that talks openly about mental health and supports and works together to create a truly health promoting campus. So I've already shared a little bit of our agenda, but we're not going to stop in between speakers. So I am going to show you this, and then we will sort of pass the baton along from one to the other. So Helen, Sophia, Tanya, Carly, and then I will close out with a few final thoughts. So thanks again for joining us, and I'll pass it to Helen now.
Thanks, Melissa. I'm just gonna do a quick share as we continue this conversation. I am a project manager and knowledge translation leader in Barb Pessett's lab, focused on end of life and palliative care, and had the privilege of leading a group in conversation in 2023, 2024, as we started this conversation at UBCO and wrapped our heads a little bit around what a compassionate campus community might look like. So I'm speaking for this whole group of people. This isn't me. And it's a privilege to represent this group in this conversation. So what is a compassionate community? The Compassionate Communities movement really began as part of a public health approach to palliative care, recognizing that a lot of what people need when they're experiencing serious health conditions is not necessarily medical care. I mean, they need medical care too, but in addition to that, they also need community-based supports, as do their caregivers. So it sounds like sort of a complicated idea, but it's really pretty simple. And most of you can probably think of some genuine kindness that happened to you at a moment when you really needed it. It can be as simple as someone saying hello. It can be a meal that was dropped off, left on the doorstep without any other interactions, and just sort of happened to be what you needed at that moment. And it's really focused on meeting people's needs and identifying what those might be. So these are just networks that are built with intention to offer support when people need it. And it can be in a lot of contexts, but can be as simple as just taking time to sit with someone and ask, how are you? And really mean it in a genuine sort of way, and be available to listen. We recognize that the experience of grief and loss is universal, and that sources of loss are many. So it can be the loss of a relationship, it can be the loss of a career path, it can be loss of social experiences that you expected to have, as well as facing serious illness yourself, or somebody that you know being given a diagnosis of a serious illness. And that itself can initiate a sense of grief. And then, of course, death and dying. We also recognize there's a terrific social discomfort with talking about grief and loss, which Melissa talked about already. And so one of the things we talked about was ways that we could support resources or provide resources to support conversations around grief and loss, normalize those conversations, recognize that this is a really common and universal experience. And then certainly one of the things we heard as we did this work from lots of students was an appreciation for having these conversations and a sense of applicability of these knowledge and skills well beyond the walls of the university. We modeled the work that I'm going to talk about on the Compassionate Campus or Compassionate Community Center of Expertise in Belgium, COCO, and they have built a Compassionate University project with a terrific amount of resources. And I will note that they've been extremely generous with their resources, sharing those. They are also pausing today for National Day of Grief and Bereavement in Belgium. So this is an international recognition of the experiences of grief and loss. They had built a student guide to grief that was specific to their campus and offered us all of their resources and freedom to pick those up and apply them to this campus. So we had the opportunity through funding through the Strategic Wellbeing Initiative to take a look at, I think I inverted my slides here. So let me tell you what we did, and then I'll show you what the guide looks like. To take their guide and build it for UBC specific purposes. And we did that through peer-to-peer interviews. And one of our interviewers is Sophia, so she'll be talking with you in a minute. Um, we interviewed students from across a variety of campus experiences, graduate students, undergraduate students, students who were living in residence life or had done, students who were local to the Kelowna, Okanagan region from all over British Columbia, around Canada, and many international students participated as well. And as we did those interviews, we did iterative revisions to that guide. So we were updating the guide based on the feedback that we received almost in real time. And as we got close to the end of our interview experience, the most common comment we got from people was, "Can I take this with me?" So we started to feel like we were getting there. We really look at the guide as a living document that's subject to ongoing review. And so there's a place at the bottom of the document itself, the guide, to provide feedback. And we've had a little bit of feedback already. We also spent time with staff, faculty, and administration taking a look at the guide and getting other input on resources. And I'll comment around the resources. They've been consolidated quite a lot. So each of the links and resources that are available in the guide lead to another wealth of resources beyond that. We just couldn't include them all. So what does the guide do? It's lovely, and I'll provide the link for that in a minute. But really aiming at very concrete ways that people can offer support to other people who are experiencing grief and loss in their circle. We're often very uncomfortable when someone's experienced loss, not quite know what to say, what to do. So there's really concrete examples of ways that really anybody, we've used some campus specific examples, can do to offer support, and things you can say. So instead of saying, "Call me if there's anything I can do," be a little more concrete and say, "How about if I give you a call on Friday to check in," and then follow through. So there's two parts of the guide. One is how to offer support for other people, and the second part is focused on offering self-compassion, making it okay to ask for help, and setting students up with some ways of going about modifying their class schedule, requesting for changes and extensions in their work. So I encourage you to go have a look at the guide. It's lovely. The Wellbeing group has posted on their website, and it's really a beautiful document. It can be downloaded as PDF, so you can keep it and store it in your files. And I will hand this off to Sophia.
Alrighty, everyone. Hi, thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Sophia Knapp.
And my name is Avery Ardema.
Awesome. And we're the co-presidents of the Palliative Care Club associated with the SUO here at UBCO Okanagan.
Our club is driven by its mission to address the core issues, bridging youth in the conversation about palliative care and end-of-life care and grief and bereavement. These are all universal luminal experiences. At any moment, we or someone that's close to us could experience one of these feelings.
Awesome. So maybe just to make this a little more personal, we'll dive into why exactly we ourselves got involved in this. So from a personal standpoint, after a loss from one of my family members, I was raised within the palliative care system in our family, and we just felt incredibly supported and loved. And we really saw the value of maintaining that autonomy and dignity within the person who is actively dying, but also within the family members who are grieving, as that is a very turbulent process. So not only was I given the privilege of learning about grief literacy at such a young age, but I thought this would be a great opportunity to not only that I have this experience, but that others around me would also too be able to have these tools when faced in a life situation as such as this. So this was amazing that I was able to be joining on this remarkable experience of creating the grief guides along with Helen, and also one of our graduated students who initially helped plan the Palliative Care Club, Emily Bogus. And so working with several students here at the University of Okanagan and conducting clinical interviews and hearing what their personal struggles were, which of course were very diverse, but how that we were all very united with the strong desire to have a more compassionate campus, to feel more heard, more understood, but also wanting to have the tools to not only know how to support ourselves while grieving, but how to support others. Would you like to share about your story of how you got involved?
Yeah, absolutely. This is my first year with the Palliative Care Club. I was so grateful to be brought on this year by Sophia. Something that really drove me to become a part of the Palliative Care Club here at UBCO was when I was younger, I had a lot of health problems. I really struggled in the environment, and I watched how my family was struggling and how like close friends of mine were struggling, and seeing that and being able to thrive after my after overcoming my health concerns, I realized that it is very important and that I want to make a difference within the community to help others feel like they got the same support and comfort that my parents received when I was struggling.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah.
So, as we know, as a society, we often struggle to approach these experiences with compassion and to support one another through these deeply challenging periods. So, this leaves many people feeling isolated, lost, and unsure of where to turn for support and how to also help others in these situations.
And so this is where our club comes in. It's time for the younger generations to step in and start to make a difference and be heard. Um, Sorry. It's time for us to lead a change in systems that do not adequately support compassion and grief literacy. Youth today are very passionate and driven and motivated, as well as curious. They want to be a part of the field in healthcare, yet are often excluded from these conversations as they are seen to be lacking the experience or the maturity to engage with complex topics.
So obviously, and of course, many people agree with us, we believe that this narrative is completely false. So currently our club has over 30 regular volunteers and then 30 casual volunteers. That totals up to 60 people who are constantly engaging with our club, all united by lived experiences of grief, loss, and serious illness. And we're all united to challenge these narratives that tell us to bury our feelings, to push through pain, but also united to build a system that brings dignity, autonomy, and humanity to patients, families, and caregivers during illness and end-of-life care.
Here at the PCC Club, or the Palliative Care Club, we are very committed to being a part of the conversations and making difference towards grief, palliative care, end-of-life experiences. And we are currently working to achieve these through three key ways: research, events, and outreach.
For sure. So to begin with research, many university students pose very strong research skills and are ready to apply them to real world needs. However, the issue is that many labs organizations necessarily don't have the bandwidth to increase their ability to take in more younger people, but also they really do doubt our experience and our ability to complete these tasks. So for example, our current team, we collaborate with a local hospice to explore the use of virtual reality in hospice care to support patients in a way of comfort, but also so that they be able to hopefully be able to travel, if you will, around the world in areas that they wish to see before they do pass, and also a way to be able to connect with family members in a more, I guess in a more virtual way, but that may make it seem more of like a closer way rather than just a phone call. So that's one exciting project that we have been able to work on.
And not only are we excited about some of the research that we've been doing as a club, we also host many different outreach and events for the campus here at UBCO. For instance, today with the release of the grief guides, we are creating grief kits. So kind of allowing students to build their own grief kit from items that we as a club determine would help people that are grieving. So they can make their own kind of grief kits either for themselves or the loss of a loved one. And within those grief kits, we will have the grief guides. We also do care packages for students, and then we also will make gifts and care packages for hospice patients later on into the semester.
Yeah, so that's just a really great way for students to be able to bond and connect with each other, since oftentimes students do have that really deep inner desire to be able to help one another, but sometimes it just needs a little little bit of a probe, a little bit of a push, and a little bit of guidance and direction as to where exactly they should be dedicating and putting their energy into these types of things. So it's a really cool initiative that we've been able to do not only within the university campus, but also extending outwards. And speaking of outwards, our last thing that we love to focus on is outreach. So our mission, we don't just want to have it be at the UBCO campus. We also wanted to extend beyond to colleges, other universities, but also high schools. So we love to partner with different hospices to hopefully, and in the works, develop an accessible volunteer training program in palliative care and grief literacy that accommodates student schedules, as that is a current barrier right now, is that students are often excluded from these training programs because the training occurs during scheduled school hours. And then in the long term, our goal is to share our blueprint with other universities and campuses, as we previously mentioned, so that they too would be able to create their own chapter and create their own club and create their own movement so that we can grow across not only just the city, a province, a country, but we can create a more compassionate society.
And so this is kind of where we are, our main goals. We come together. We would like to, as Sophia said, serve a blueprint to help this expand into different high schools, because there's lots of interest in the high schools in helping and making a difference toward palliative care and end of life care. But not only high schools, like Sophia said, but also other universities. If we all come together, we can help everyone discover their journey and feel autonomy in their journey through grief and mental health, and make it more of a comfortable topic to speak about. Because as Helen was saying, it's a very hard topic and it's a very awkward topic of conversation, but it happens to everyone. And so normalizing this concept, I believe, is very important. And so we're working to make that and make it more common on campus and just really make students feel comfortable and supported. We hope to build societal resilience, not only by suppressing emotions or facing struggles and isolations, but learning how we can support each other in healthy relationships to feel more understood and confident, as well as supported here at UBCO.
Yeah, just at the end of the day, this is a universal experience, and that not only is this an adult topic, but it's also a young person's topic too. So
Absolutely.
that the more that we educate our younger generation, hopefully we can revolutionize our systems today so that our future will be more compassionate.
Because anyone of any age can experience loss, and having the tools and the support systems to handle that is super beneficial and necessary.
Yeah, so if there's any students here today on this call in the EME from 12 to 2 today, we're going to be sending out and launching those grief kits, which is super fun. So you can come and build your own customizable one. It doesn't just have to be for you. It can also be for someone else who you may be going through a little bit of a difficult time. So feel free to drop by the foyer and say hello to us, where we'll also be giving out the grief guides too alongside this. Awesome. Yes. And if you'd like to reach out to us, it's just the PalliativeCareClub@gmail.com. We really look forward to working with everyone. Thank you.
Hi, ladies. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me here. My name's Tanya. I just want to say that was amazing to hear both you ladies talk about this amazing initiative. Can just hear the passion and compassion in your voice, and I'm excited to refer people to you as well. So I'm a counselor with the WAS Wellbeing and Accessibility Student Services. I'm here to talk about the grief and loss group that we started up this year. My colleague Patricia Gomez, who's not here today, we just felt there was a need to start up a grief and loss group. We work with a wonderful counseling team here. If anyone's ever not come to counseling, then you can meet our wonderful team, and they can attest to themes of grief and loss that were needed on campus. So then we thought, oh, maybe we'll try and fill a gap and talk to different people about having one. So yeah, our manager approved it, and we started to have one in March and one in September. We just finished. Our rationale is that navigating grief and loss and change alone is hard. We wanted to help build community on campus for students. And our just hope is, even on a busy campus like this, you can feel alone in your grief. And so our hope was that people could find comfort and support from others going through similar experiences. And research shows that actually people who attend some kind of group have longer lasting positive outcomes than individual counseling alone. Some things about our group: we decided to have a closed group. Talked about open and closed, but for now we just thought to have a closed group where students had to register. We felt that a closed group helps to build greater trust and cohesion among members, provides kind of for more structured environment of activities, and allows for deeper work on sensitive issues. We had group members come and we co-created guidelines with them just to ensure comfort and emotional safety of all participants. And we had 2 different times, just trying to work with students, what times would be better. In March, we had example 6 sessions on Tuesdays from 5 to 7. This September, we just finished on November 6th, and we had 7 sessions, made it a little longer, might make it longer again. That was in the afternoon from 1:30 to 3:30. So just trying to work with students for different times and different days. At the end of sessions for both of these groups, we had survey links to help inform what went well and other ideas of students as well. And kind of, we decided to have our group for those going through multiple kind of losses, as what Helen mentioned earlier, right? Not just the loss of a death of a loved one, but many abortion, loss of culture, loss of mobility, declining health, divorce, and so forth. So we decided that was something we wanted to have for everybody. In group, we gave, in case you're wondering or wanted to maybe check it out sometime, we gave psychoeducation on grief and loss. Had a variety of activities were incorporated: writing, art, music, videos, sharing time, worksheets. We emailed students links and resources. We just really wanted to reiterate that there's no one right way to grieve. It's not linear, it can be messy and confusing. And we had a lot of guided discussions and reflection time. I'm just going to, sorry, no recording. Topics that we talked about: what is grief and loss? We already mentioned. Barriers to letting go. This is something that's not always talked about, but culturally, depression, negative thoughts, who am I if I'm not grieving, and more. And so we just had a discussion what's kind of interferes with us towards our healing journey, right? We talked about physical impacts on stress on the body, things that can happen and make us, they're greatly linked together, physical and anxiety and depression. Lots of different activities that we draw on the skills. We had 2 master's students also helping with practicum. So they were young and fresh and had a bunch of cool ideas, so we could add those in as well. Bunch of other activities, I don't want to get too much into it, but art and vision board and letter writing, a lot of them show different integration of different art activities can really help with healing, dance, movement. So that we even did grief gardening in our last semester. So those are just some things that we had just to work together. Participation was not mandatory. If people can share whatever they wanted to share. So it was just a special time, and we had a nice celebration at the end with everybody. So we're hoping to plan one for the spring, next year, early, I guess, January, February. Not sure how that's going to look like yet, but if you have any questions, comments, ideas, want to just attend, take a look at the social media when we post them, or feel free to connect with us at the counseling office. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Tanya. I'm just going to pull up my slides here. Oh, just 1 second. Okay, can you see my slides, everyone?
We can see them, but
Okay.
they're not in present yet. They're not in slideshow yet.
Thank you. Perfect. There. Hi, everybody. My name is Carly Benoit, and I work in the field of workplace health and well-being. My colleague Amanda Swoboda was doing a lot of work with this group previous, so I'm just standing in today because she's out there supporting our community in different ways. And I just wanted to take a little bit of time about talking about co-creating a compassionate campus from a workplace perspective. And when I do that, I really appreciated Palliative Care Club. They were talking about different voices being heard when we're talking about grief and loss. And when we think about the workplace at UBC, we have 6 generations of folks working here, living here, a part of our community. So when we think about needing to hear everybody's voices, I think that's really important. And in doing so, thinking about people leaders. So when you come to work, it's really important for people leaders to not avoid the topic or experience, in the sense that it can make grief even more isolating. To be direct and avoid platitudes or euphemisms. Um, Addressing clearly and sensitively and compassionately ways that signal psychological safety and their emotional intelligence. So that can be about proactively communicating the type of leave somebody's able to take, um, and support for what they're facing, helping give information about what types of resources are available, whether that be benefits or if they need leave beyond what the standard leave would be for bereavement in those cases. Um, and one of the biggest things I think I encounter when I'm working with leaders is just helping them understand that offering support isn't solely at the time of the individual's loss or immediately upon their return to work, but also looking at engaging long term. So that's continuing to check in and assess workplace needs as you go. Um, and offering those supports repeatedly. So doing so not only positions the employee's expert when you're asking what they need through their own grief process, but also sets the stage for ongoing communication and collaboration in your relationship with your staff. Um, I think three things to really keep in mind, I think everybody's touched on, is that grief isn't linear. Everyone's grief looks different, sounds different, is experienced in a different way, and that support really needs to be offered in the short and long term. Um, and from a faculty and staff perspective, this is speaking from your individual experience and also when supporting other members of your community, is that accepting looks like recognizing normal, healthy grief can be chaotic and complicated. Emotionally, you're riding a roller coaster and you will be riding it for some time. You can relax a bit and try not to fight it and know that you don't have to like the turmoil, but it's helpful to give yourself permission to experience it. Sometimes grief can represent discomfort, as I think everyone touched on so far, and that unease, we may place expectations on time and rush the process. We may feel this need to show up in a certain way a lot faster than we may be prepared for. And I think what I encourage is it's important to honor where we are and recognize that grief is not linear, but it's such an individual process. Even if more than one person is experiencing the same loss, it's not the same experience necessarily. To remember that significant dates or special days, seasonal cultural celebrations can be very difficult and can reawaken grief. This is normal, and self-compassion, understanding, and if there's capacity, to plan for increased self-care and community care support. Nurturing yourself is taking care of yourself. This is especially true for people and groups who, in the various roles they hold, provide caregiving support and emotional labor. I wanted to share a visual just that highlights grief is not linear, um, and share just some common concerns grieving employees have. Balancing work demands and practical affairs, addressing financial, administrative, or estate issues, experiencing challenges with concentration, focus, grief brain, brain fog, and having challenges around productivity. Not feeling like their old selves and having to pretend or mask struggling to honestly express emotions at work, fearing that grief will be minimized or dismissed outright. I wanted to share a few practical resources just of what we have available through our employee and family assistance provider. You can get crisis counseling 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can talk to someone immediately on the phone if you ever need that. And then there's other supports. So we have counseling you can set up where you can actually select a provider that may fit some of your preferences. They also offer a peer-to-peer support program through Togetherall, which is anonymous and moderated by a licensed mental health clinician. Um, and then there's also Digital CBT, which is an online counseling program through their web platform. So through for Togetherall and the CBT online programs, you would need to create a username online. We can share these resources afterwards. And then there's other services through life transitions, which can be anything around budgeting support, recognizing those can be high stressors as well, and other resources in addition to. I also want to highlight through our extended health benefits for staff and faculty, we have psychological support, so counseling that's covered up to $3,000 a year without a referral being needed from your healthcare provider. And it's 100% coverage, which means there's no deductible in those cases. A few other things are just existing webinars that you can access. One is called Healing from Everyday Grief and Non-Death Losses, and practical strategies for addressing grief in the workplace. Our team too, what my team does a lot of is we work with individuals that may be struggling at work or have questions about what supports are available, but also we work with leaders in these circumstances too. And these are things we often reinforce with all the leaders we connect with too. And I just wanted to finish with, I think the same theme we're hearing from everyone is just this opportunity to co-create a compassionate campus. And it's about getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, and that piece around understanding that grief is non-linear and that we need to check in with people, sorry, not just at the beginning of someone's grief experience, but throughout time, recognizing that can be annually even. And these are ways that we let people know we care. If you have capacity to, and you're experiencing grief, to let people know what you need or what is helpful. And I think the last piece is focusing on safety and security. And safety and security looks like confidentiality, sharing resources, providing choice whenever possible, and collaborating with individuals when they're in that process of experiencing that loss or that grief. I'm all done. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Carly. That was a great presentation. Tanya, thank you so much. Sophia. I'm blanking on your colleague's name. Forgive me. But thank you so much, everybody, for sharing. Just a great selection. We certainly know that this is not comprehensive of everything that's going on our campus. There are so many pieces of grief and loss that are tied tightly to our culture and getting cultural supports. There's so much of our grief and loss journey that is related to our spiritual practices and spiritual communities, and we didn't have opportunity to press into that as much, although I see hi, Melissa Berry Appleton, one of our campus chaplains, is online here, but certainly amazing work being done in those domains as well. Indigenous Programs and Services does beautiful work and support, and our Global Engagement Office does really neat events that we collaborate on. Wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about other student supports that are available as well. Though again, I just did want to emphasize that this is certainly not everything that we do. So, but we'll touch on a little bit of what we've been getting up to through Wellbeing and Accessibility Services. One of the major projects that my department stewards is called Voice. It's a community-based participatory action research project, and most recently we've been focusing on social well-being. And certainly the themes around this work were around many themes around co-creating a compassionate campus. Now, the theme not necessarily around grief and loss, but certainly around learning to be more supportive of one another. Many students feeling like they don't have the skills and capacity to engage in complicated issues like conflict or issues like relational ruptures and the grief around losses of relationship and things like that. So we are working very hard with those data to respond and think about ways to build those competencies and skills and supports and the spaces and places where students can explore those together in community, and really normalizing and bringing into, we kind of on campuses have a terrible habit of making all losses very clinical in the sense of every time we talk about a global loss or something significant that's happened on our campus, we do immediate referral to counseling services. And our counselors are incredible, but also how do we create a community wherein we actually do know how to care for each other and support each other and cry in each other's laps for a solid 2 weeks if that's what's needed, and that it isn't always a clinical practice that's required. Today, our team and Sophia and team touched on this, but please, we will be launching the grief kits and the grief guides. You can visit them in the EME foyer with our community market. Look at some of the other things that are available. Drop by between 12 and 2. We have Wellbeing and Accessibility Services. This is who our team is. So UNC 337 is a counseling department, as well as a student health clinic with an integrated psychologist as well. So physicians, nurses, nurse practitioners. We have for students a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week service called Here to Talk that they can access in multiple languages, and that can be some coaching or some counseling. Our Disability Resource Center does incredible work and does lots of programming and education and advocacy on campus, as well as providing accommodations to students. Spiritual and Multi-Faith Services, UNC 316 is the space that they practice, but there is also many faith practitioners that can be accessed. My team is called Campus Wellness and Education, and we run a ton of programs out of a space called Picnic. And I'm just going to touch on a couple of our programs because they are, well, actually, these are counseling programs first. So Tanya's program there, the Grief and Loss Circle, is listed. And this really is a beautiful group exploring all sorts of different pathways. We do have a weekly yoga for mental wellness, a Y Mind runs several times a year, and quite a few other groups that are available from our counseling website that you can see launch occasionally or at different times in the year. Most of them are closed groups and some are open, but really worth exploring. My team provides these programs. Our weekly mocktail meetups that just hosted by UBCO's Reduction and Recovery. This is a space where we frequently are looking at grief and loss as it relates to changing our relationship with substances. So this group is peer-led, and we're seeing about 12 to 16 students participate in this group, where we are really thinking about whether it's sobriety, whether it's reducing substance use, whether it is just sort of starting to look at where they're at with where students are at with substances. That group is quite powerful. We also do think about, when we're thinking about our other substance use health programs, such as our drug checking program is very trauma informed, thinking through when we are using substances, what are we using them for, as well as naloxone training. Other sort of our community building programs that we run, things like our daily breakfast program, Monday to Friday, 8:30 to 10:30. We offer community meals every Tuesday where people can come together in solidarity and community and eat together and have a snack together. Community cooking classes. And I already mentioned our community market, which happens every second Tuesday. And we do always provide spaces for either health literacy events or things like grief kit distribution. Today we will have a Thrive booth and a grief kit happening, as well as our community meal in the afternoon. Other ways that you can sort of access our programs, Nurse on Campus, to sort of drop in and talk about navigation of health services. There are on campus many additional supports for students. So all students can access up to $1,100 in counseling support. So if they wanted to maintain a counselor in community, they can access that. We also on campus have the walk-in psychology clinic Tuesdays and Thursdays, where students can or student staff and faculty actually can drop in for a well-being assessment, and with our PhD psychology students. Third Space also practices on campus as well. Problematic substance use clinic that is hosted by the psychology clinic on psychology department on campus is also available. And also just a moment to ensure that everybody, any UBC staff or faculty, knows how to support students in distress. We have a program called Early Assist, where we can make referral, and there is a sort of follow-up made for students as need requires. I think the continued pursuit of looking for ways to create a compassionate campus. We're working on a lot of projects. Certainly, we know that the number one reason that students sought support from our campus ombudsperson was around short-term injuries or concussions or things like that. And a number of the themes that emerged in that work really echoed the work that Helen and Sophia found, where when we are in an institution like UBC and facing short-term injuries, or we're facing complex life circumstances like grief and loss and major things, there's a lot that we can do institutionally to support one another, at least to not make it harder. We found many of the themes were around one faculty member responding one way and another faculty member responding another way. And for students, that was very challenging. And so we would just invite all listeners, everyone that's on the call today, to join us in exploring ways and working towards a community where we can support each other, increase compassion, and create a health promoting campus for us all to live, work, and play in. So thanks again for spending your precious time with us. And if you had questions, we do have a few minutes open. And I think that, Jaquetta, correct me if I'm wrong, that you can add comments or chats or request anything. We'd be really open to responding to any questions that you have for us about campus programs or interventions.
I do have good questions for that. This is Eric, and then thank you so much for the presentation. It's wonderful to see the team and then come together. It's really kind of a covering for that. So I do have one question for that. Just like when we talk about the student populations for that, and at UBCO, and then so we do have a significant portions of international students. And sometimes it's just like how they managing or kind of coordinate the grief for that might be different from the domestic students. For that, I just wonder for that, and what would be the advices? And also sometimes international students, because of the cultural reasons, and sometimes they just like hiding then or not willing to share for that. So, but it doesn't mean kind of like they're not kind of like feel that emotionally for that. So I just want to kind of like see, we have the student bodies here, we have the professional here for that, and you came across some difficult case for that, and maybe share some best examples with us here. Thank you.
Yeah, Eric, I can pick that up a little bit. We certainly spoke with a lot of international students as we did the interviews. And we're so grateful to the students who did participate in those interviews for being so willing to share their cultural and personal experiences. Definitely some trends there. And I think one of the goals that we had, and that seemed to resonate with students, was to expand the list of resources. So like Melissa talked about, often when something happens, people will refer a student to the counseling center, or they'll say, if you're having difficulty or struggling, go to the counseling center. And that in itself, it can be a barrier for students who don't feel that they need counseling per se. And so one of our goals in that student guide was to expand that list of resources and expand the sort of the mind space for students of there are a lot of people on campus ready to talk with you, and here's a menu of the kinds of people you might go and chat with. So perhaps for you, finding the Buddhist chaplain who's here in the room with us would be more comfortable than showing up at the counseling center. But we definitely heard some themes from, I would say, in particular international students, but domestic students as well. The hesitation to ask for exceptions from faculty, or to even notify faculty that they had experienced a loss. And I think one of the drivers actually of this conversation was some observations from our colleagues in residence life that international students in particular often face barriers to being able to travel home when there's been a loss or a serious illness diagnosis or something at home. So we also included some financial resources there that might help students access capacity to travel home in ways that they might not have thought of. So part of the goal here was to look at ways of expanding people's awareness of resources. And I think one of the things that we know is that even when students have been given information at the time of orientation and other time, until they need it, those resources aren't particularly top of mind. So one of the pieces here is to expand people's awareness that that grief guide exists so that we can get it into the hands of students at the time that they need it. So being able to deliver that document to a student from a faculty or staff perspective to say, here's a menu of places you might turn and some other things you might not have thought of that could be helpful.
I'll ask Tanya to speak next.
Hi, Eric. Yeah, I was just going to say I've been working closely with the Global Engagement Office here. So it's been really good getting all the team their perspective on the challenges and struggles and grief and loss of international students as well. So then I bring that back. We have weekly counseling team meetings, and I can talk with them about the themes and barriers. You know, a lot of times the stigma of counseling, a lot of times they tell me, international students, they don't even have counseling there. But it's interesting, like, yeah, you say the barrier, sometimes cultural traditions, practices can help with grief and loss. Sometimes it puts in as a barrier. Even I know talking with some in Canada, Indigenous peoples, there's certain things that you within a family, differences in grieving, right? Some Indigenous people say you can only grieve for 4 days, and after that, some bands you can't because you're keeping them from passing over or all. Anyway, it's so interesting, so many different types. Another thing, Eric, my colleague Nora Lambrecht from the Global Engagement Office, we got approved for a grant. So we titled it Global Perspectives on Wellness, and we've been interviewing tons of staff and faculty from different departments, but because of timeline, we only did a certain amount. So we have a lot of interesting findings from there too, and kind of what Helen and other people were saying with the preloading, and sometimes it's not needed to talk to a counselor till it's times of crisis. So we're just wondering how we can recruitment and whoever can preload it before so they know what's going to happen or into orientation. Anyway, it's really a lot of cool findings, a lot of caring, compassionate faculty, staff, students on this campus. So hopefully, like, we can continue just keep working together and help support international students the best we can. And also, I like to say that the chaplain and the spiritual services are, I've heard talk to Todd, are underutilized. So if there's a way that international students know, oh, I can go talk with an imam, or I can go here, that would just be really cool to let them know that they have that as well for them. But yeah, just wanted to share that.
Thank you. Thank you. I think, Sophia, you want to share from the student club perspective? Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, both of us briefly want to touch on it. So not only on top of the grief guides that Helen mentioned, but also really want to highlight how it is a live document and how people are always able to give input and that there's always people monitoring it to create those updates. But not only that, but the grief kits are also a live project where during our launch day, we're actually seeking out feedback too. So individuals that come up to our stand, they're able to tell us what are some things that they love the most about it, or what are some things that they're missing and wishing to see. As often we see, like for cross-cultural differences and whatnot, there's going to be differences and things that are going to be lacking, and also things that many people need to consider that should be included in these packages too. Did you want to add anything about the location?
Yeah, I think just like being able to, we started off with a few different things that our executive team thought would be very beneficial in these care kits. But like Sophia said, it's a live project. And so seeking that feedback to be able to make the kits as as beneficial of a resource as it can be is something that is super powerful, I think.
And not only that, although today we're launching at a public table where people can come up and customize their own kits, that's nothing, it's customizable. They can add what they would like to based on the selected items that we have for the day. But we are also giving them out at the wellness center. So that's a place where it's more private, quiet. So if someone's not necessarily that comfortable coming up and getting a kit for themselves or someone else, they're more than welcome to come grab one over there.
Thank you. It's wonderful. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Okay. I think we have hit our final time, unless there was a pressing question that anyone wanted to share. Otherwise, I think we will let folks run to their next session.
Well, we say maybe just now as an interim director for the Institute for Healthy Living and Clinical Disease Prevention for that. And thank you so much to the team here to share what you're doing, all the wonderful works. And then so I'm pretty sure you're making wonderful impacts to our community, and all the best to all your great work for that. Thank you so much for doing that. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you for your generosity, Eric. Thank you very much, panelists and organizers. Jaquetta in the background, you're very much appreciated. And thank you so much for spending your precious time with us. We appreciate everything that you as listeners are doing to create a better campus for us all. Have a good day. Happy Thrive Month.
Thank you.